Good morning, everyone. It is my privilege and pleasure to introduce you to Senator Nelson, Administrator of NASA. He was sworn in as the 14th NASA Administrator on May 3rd, 2021, and tasked with carrying out the administration's vision for NASA. He has chaired the Space Subcommittee in the U.S. House of Representatives for 6 years and later served as the ranking member on the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, where he was recognized as the leading space program advocate in Congress. During his time in Congress, Administrator Nelson has been a strong advocate for NASA's Earth science programs and authored numerous pieces of legislation to combat and mitigate the effects of climate change. Senator Nelson was also a vocal proponent for STEM career training and education programs to create and fill the jobs of the future. And from 4-H president to international president of the Key Club in high school, Nelson has always known the importance of investing in neighbors and communities to create a better future. Administrator Nelson continued to serve his community and country while in college at the University of Florida, Yale, and the University of Virginia Law School. Senator Nelson has served in public office for over 4 decades, and he also was part of the STS-61 crew, along with amazing crew members like astronaut Hoot Gibson, who served as chief astronaut, former Administrator Charlie Bolden, Major General Charlie Bolden, I should say. And also he served alongside astronaut Frank Chang Diaz, who's currently working on a plasma rocket who could get us to Mars in just a month. So among some very, very special people and crew, he is committed to the vision of space exploration. And we are so very delighted you're here today. Welcome, Senator Bill Nelson, Administrator of NASA.
Good morning, Janet. And when you mention my crewmates, it just brings a smile to my lips because these guys were just such accomplished, wonderful human beings, each of whom had such a sense of humor that it was just an extraordinarily enjoyable time as we trained together and then flew together. Well, we're going to talk about the fact that we're going back to the moon and then we're going to Mars. And this is about bringing explorers and adventurers together here on Earth so that we can venture out into the cosmos. And it's also about strengthening partnerships across borders, across economic sectors, across racial lines. This is an inclusive overall opportunity for us to do new things in an inclusive way and to have extraordinary scientific discovery. And as a result of that discovery, innovation. But Mars is going to require all of us to work together, government, industry, international partners, the public, everybody. And despite the COVID difficulties, it's still been a very exciting year for NASA. We had, of course, everybody on the edge of their seat as Perseverance endured 7 minutes of terror at successful landing. As the president put it, with science, hope, and vision, there's not a thing that we can't do as a country. And of course, he's right. And since then, we've created, believe it or not, we have created oxygen on Mars. We've seen that little helicopter defeat the odds well beyond its planned lifespan. And it's now not just a tech demo, it's a scout for the rover Perseverance. And most recently, NASA's Perseverance captured, sealed, and stored the first core sample ever drilled on another planet. NASA and the European Space Agency plan to return the rover's sample tubes to Earth for closer study. We expect jaw-dropping discoveries, including exploration into the question of whether life once existed on Mars. And so that core sample that has now been processed and packaged, eventually it will return to Earth, and it's going to start to unlock the secrets of Mars in ways that we haven't been able to. This is a momentous achievement. It reflects our nation's never-ending commitment to discovery and innovation and exploration. And so I'm quite excited about when we put humans and those humans walk on this far distant planet. But for us to go onward to Mars, we need to first go back to the moon. Now, Artemis 1, which is the first uncrewed mission, it will launch from Kennedy at the end of this year. That's how close we are. This space launch system, which is the name of the rocket, it'll be the most powerful we've ever had. And it'll have 8.8 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. It's going to last 4 to 6 weeks, traveling to distances that no human-rated spacecraft has ever been. And next year, we're going to usher in a new era of global science and exploration when we kick off a series of commercial moon deliveries. America needs a long-term presence on and around the moon, both robotic and human. And it's how we will develop the experience and capabilities to push out then further into the heavens. It's how we will eventually send the first astronauts to Mars by the preparation that we do on the moon. And there's a lot of work to be done. What kind of food will we need? Do we have the propulsion systems we need to go to Mars? Is the technology there for surface power? These are some of the questions that we've got to answer. As we build up our capabilities at the moon over time, we are working to send humans to Mars late in the decade of the 2030s. Today, humanity is closer than ever to those footprints being on Mars. It's not science fiction. It's real. NASA has a history of setting ambitious goals and then accomplishing them. And the proof is going to be over the next couple of decades. Mars is the next giant leap for humanity. Thank you for letting me share these ideas, and I'd love to have some questions.
Well, questions we do have. And again, when I hear all that hope and science and exploration and destination, let me ask you this, because I can tell, it's like, what better person to be in this position as administrator than a former astronaut, and to have had that overview look down on our beautiful blue ball. But you've got a great heart for students. We've got a ton listening today. What would you tell them? Where do you want them to engage, or how can they be part of this great thing that we're going to see happen in the next 20 or 30 years?
Well, I want you to listen to my words, students. I was a part at the end of the Apollo generation. And what happened there was it revolutionized our life here on Earth. First of all, it inspired generations to want to get into science and technology and engineering and mathematics. And we saw the ripple effects on our society, indeed on the globe, as a result of that, with all the new technology that was accelerated in development that affect our very daily lives here. Now, you students are going to be part of the Artemis generation, back to the moon and on to Mars. And that's going to mean all kinds of new technology, new ways of doing things, new ways of thinking about solving problems, the use of artificial intelligence. What we learn on the moon will help us be able to sustain human life, to go all the way to Mars, and who knows how long to be on the surface before we can return. So you are going to be a part of the Artemis generation. And this is an exciting time.
And speaking of, kind of like it is one of the most exciting times for the students of today will have, their Apollo moment, only it will be their Artemis moment. When we launch Artemis 1 in just months from now, do you have an estimated date when we're going to have that crewed mission going back to the moon, or that crewed mission orbiting the moon? What's the timeline kind of as you see it happening?
It should come maybe a year and a half afterwards, because what we're doing is we're testing the systems in the spacecraft uncrewed, just like we've always done in the past. The only one that we couldn't do it with was the space shuttle, because the space shuttle had to be flown on return. But just like all the other spacecraft, we send them up uncrewed first. And then it's going to take time to develop all the life support systems, further refining for the first crew that will orbit the moon. That should be in late 23, early 24. And then the preparation to take a crew back in Artemis 3 to lunar orbit. It's an elliptical orbit that they will be in. And the lander that is being created in this competition in the commercial world will rendezvous with the Orion spacecraft, and the crew will transfer into the lander and will go down to the surface of Mars and then return. And that is Artemis 3. Artemis 4 is taking what is known as the Gateway, which is like a lunar outpost in orbit in that elliptical orbit that I described. And it will become a way station for us coming and going to and from the surface of the moon. A lot of that activity, by the way, is going to be on the south pole of the moon, where we know there's a lot of water that's frozen. And of course, where you have water, you have a source of oxygen and hydrogen, which is obviously needed for fuel. So it's an exciting time.
Oh, it's like, I will tell you that not only students, but many, many grown-ups and humans all over the planet are excited about seeing the return to the moon and onto Mars. We've got a question from Robert Howard. What is your vision for human activity on the moon after the initial Artemis missions, and then on Mars, and after those first human landings? What do you envision, or what would you like to see as NASA's role in both places at that particular point in time?
All the things that we need to do and to learn in order to prepare to go millions of miles away, not 250,000 miles to the moon, but millions of miles away, and be there for long periods of time on a less than 1 gravity atmosphere. Mars is roughly 1/3 of the gravity of the Earth. And so that means exceptional building of habitats, using the regolith or the moon dust as a compound in which to build things, building habitats, doing new scientific experiments. I said earlier, we're sending all of these commercial missions. Most of them are scientific, but some of them are going to be looking for that water and how to process it on the South Pole of the moon. The answer to the question is an inclusive answer. All of the above is what we're going to do in order to go further out into the solar system.
I know I'm looking forward to being a multi-planetary species, and I know many of the students listening are. With this kind of evolution of all these commercial entities, it's like, how important are they as partners? How important are the international partners in achieving both the moon and Mars?
Both of them are very important and are critical components. We're building the gateway or the outpost that will be in lunar orbit with our international partners. That's already underway. Our commercial partners are essential, not just in the old way of doing things where the government was the contractor and they contracted with. Now, this is to unleash the ingenuity and creativity of commercial companies and let them compete. And so we've already seen very successful delivery of crew to the International Space Station in low Earth orbit. Likewise, the delivery of cargo. That has been very successful and much cheaper for NASA, because we get it on fixed price contracts. So too, we're going to try to do the same thing for a lander, and not just one, which is the first demonstration landing, but for a series of landers over the course of a decade as we prepare to go to Mars. And so it's going to be a robust amount of activity with our commercial as well as our international partners.
Steve Sherman asked, with the accelerated growth of commercial space entities, is NASA going to continue to work in-house on the transportation of astronauts, or will that eventually become outsourced?
When it comes to the safety of crew, NASA will be all over it, like the morning dew. NASA has to be involved with that when it involves human life. And that's just the way that we've been on the commercial crew to the International Space Station.
So how excited are you for this all civilian mission that's about to happen in a couple of days, as you yourself as an astronaut? What do you think about this commercial kind of like democratization of space that's happening with these commercial entities?
Well, it's another opening up of space. In this particular one, other than the fact that the spacecraft, in this case, the Dragon spacecraft, was built under the auspices of NASA because of the safety of astronauts. But other than that, this is their deal. This is SpaceX's deal. NASA is not involved in it because this is a totally commercial operation of which they are not touching, or in this case, docking with the International Space Station. But it's another example of where we'd like to go in low Earth orbit eventually. We want to keep the International Space Station going until 2030. And then we want to phase that out. We want commercial operations to take over low Earth orbit. We want them to do the manufacturing. We want them to have their own space station so that NASA can continue to push outward into the solar system and beyond. And by the way, I don't want to forget mentioning at the end of this year, we are going to launch a telescope, and it's going to be 1 million miles in a neutrally buoyant place on the far side of the Earth from the sun. And it's going to look out through a keyhole in the heavens, and it's going to look back, if you can believe this, over 13 billion years and capture the light from that far ago, which is light shortly after the Big Bang and the formation of the first galaxies. I mean, no telling what we're going to discover. We hope we're going to continue with that telescope to discover other planets revolving around other suns in other galaxies, of which we have every evidence from the existing telescope, which is in low Earth orbit, that in fact there are those planets. And this is part of NASA's program of constantly looking for life out in the universe. That's one of the reasons we took that core sample from the rock on Mars to see what are the elements there, what's the evidence. This is a lake bed. Is the evidence there of water? And if there was water, is there any indication that there was any kind of life? This is our push outward to find out, which I think we're going to find out. We're not alone.
I'm reminded as you speak of, there's a Gene Roddenberry quote that says, "We are on a journey to keep an appointment with whatever we are." And I think that's the brilliance of NASA and exploration and all that the agency continues to do to inspire and get us a little bit closer to understanding not only our place in this world, but also because I'm expecting, we've got one question from Ravi Deepak, who wants to know, what was maybe your favorite experience in space? Because there's always the looking out, but there's also the looking back at this blue ball.
Well, you put your finger on it. I'll never forget just being overwhelmed by the beauty of this creation called planet Earth. And yet it looks so fragile. I became more of an environmentalist when I went into space, because what I saw, how fragile it looks, and with the naked eye, I could see how we were messing it up in a couple of cases. I decided I wanted to be a better steward of our Earth when I returned to Earth. But I had another experience, because as a public servant, I looked as we orbited the Earth every 90 minutes on the daylight side. I'll tell you, I didn't see racial divisions, and I didn't see religious divisions. As I looked at the Earth, I didn't see political divisions. I saw that we're all in this together. And boy, would I love for the political armies that have suddenly so divided our country right now. I wish they could see that perspective of our home that I had the privilege of seeing.
I'm reminded whenever I talk with astronaut Nicole Stott, one of the things that she said several times to my students: we can't expect to be good crewmates out there if we're not good crewmates here first. So a couple of other questions. I know that the creation of the Mars Program Office for robotic missions proved to be, super successful. But Can you imagine a time when you might create a Moon and Mars kind of program office?
The universe is the limit. So I can't imagine. There are things that I can't imagine because my brain is not that big.
Any last words that you might want to say to the students or the good folks listening today about your commitment as the administrator of NASA, what we can count on?
Okay, Artemis generation, you know what to do. Get your schoolwork done, prepare yourself, get ready, become a part of the team, because we're going out into the heavens. We are fulfilling our destiny as explorers and adventurers. And by the way, have fun along the way.
Brilliant. Senator Nelson, Administrator Nelson, thank you so much. This is our manifest, everyone, to go get prepared, do all of the right things as we propel ourselves back to the moon and onto Mars, and how we will celebrate when we get to see those first boots return to the moon. And then as those first ever humans take those first steps, making that kind of like honoring that leap of Apollo with an even bolder leap to Mars. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you. I cannot wait for the launch of Artemis 1 and the launch of the James Webb Telescope. And again, thank you very much for your time today, good sir.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Oh, and Hoot says, make sure you go for your morning run or your afternoon run. He'll be calling you to check up on you.
Well, I would say to Hoot Gibson, get off the couch, Hoot. Go do your push-ups and pull-ups.
That may be our next conversation. We'll bring your STS-61 crew and just listen to you guys tell stories about your mission.